gentlemen, the American wedding is a dark and fearful sham. The event itself is designed to incite anger and drain loved ones of patience, support, and money. Most marriages fail miserably in 2 years. Others end in murder-suicides. A small percentage of them end with a term we like to call livable hatred.
Marriage has always been a black and repugnant sore on human living.
Hello all, this is Starbird, and I disagree. I didn't want to do another MGTOW video quite this soon, but wow did my last video rustle some jimmies. And to be fair, I got some very good responses from both sides of the aisle. So here I'm going to try something new. I'm going to pick a few specific comments that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to do my very best to respond to these in more detail. So, without further ado, here we go. Okay, number 1. I don't know whose content you're watching, but yada. Some of the most positive and inspiring content producers on YouTube, and this is also a general response to a lot of people accusing me of strawmanning. Now, I specified in the original video that I have no problem with choice MGTOWs. If you want to act a certain way in your own life, go nuts, as long as you aren't hurting anyone. The people I'm talking about are some of the big YouTube MGTOWs I've come across, in particular Sexy MGTOW and Angry MGTOW, who are extremely evangelical, very anti-woman, and like to paint anti-feminists like myself as feminists, because we aren't MGTOW enough. Now, are you aware of what a no true Scotsman's fallacy is? This is one of the common arguments used by feminists, and it bugs the fuck out of me. And unfortunately, I'm seeing the same line of arguments from MGTOW here, that only your or your favored creator's idea of the movement is valid, and that any inconvenient proponents of your movement can just be dismissed as not real feminists, I mean, not real MGTOWs. Okay, number 2. It's about self-preservation, and no longer participating in a system that has no benefit to men. Alright, here we're going to dive into a few stats and studies. Now, of course, stats are always twisty bastards. But looking at what I've got here, there is a definite correlation between happiness and marriage versus being single, so long as it's a good marriage. Men who are happily married make more than similar men who are unmarried, experience less depression, less self-destructive behavior, and are happier and healthier overall. When I say that a lot of MGTOWs are advising men against their best interests, this is what I'm talking about. Number 3. MGTOWs aren't recruiting, we're just educating our fellow men and pointing out what needs to be pointed out. I'm going to say go and look at a chap called Angry MGTOW. He seems to be one of the most prolific of the MGTOWs, and nearly every video he makes seems to be a rant about how women are destroying society, how men must keep away from them at all costs, and in his own words, how all roads lead to MGTOW or death, which, to be honest, is about as close to a rallying cry as the MGTOW movement has. Sure, there are some positive MGTOWs and some choice MGTOWs who don't recruit in this manner, and I've got no beef with them. But using misleading stats and naked fear-mongering is a tactic that the bloody feminists have been using to push their agenda for ages. And it's annoying to see a movement that I am broadly sympathetic to going the same way. I'll get into how this is being done a little bit later. Number 4. Really though, I would suggest to you that if you are going to go into disagreement about something, yada, you might like to pick another topic. Why? If what I say is wrong, then you should be able to show me why specifically. This is how you solidify and sharpen up your own beliefs. I am fully prepared to admit that I am wrong at any turn, but you need to show me why I am wrong. Okay, number 5. MGTOW is good for me and for every man that protects his own interests and welfare in this hostile environment. I already talked about this in point 1. No, married men are generally healthier and better off than non-married men. And before we go into it, I don't think that disengagement is the best strategy. We need to keep talking and keep hammering away at the bunker. The Western world is going to go 2 ways from here: a gradual pushback into conservatism, or straight down the liberal rabbit hole, and we need as many voices on the other side remaining rational and not alienating themselves. Number 6. Intellectualizing about it won't sort the problem out, because the problem is misandry. Action is needed, but in this case it is more non-action is needed. That is what will turn the tables and redress the balance. Misandry, maybe. I think that the problem is more ideological infiltration and demotivation via education from a very early age, and that education has a very leftist, pro-feminist, and overall globalized bias. And no, non-action solves very little. Can you explain to me how MGTOWism is going to fix anything? Number 7. If you are really against what is bad for society, you should be calling out the gynocentric regime that has been doing all this damage. I do, actually. I've already made several anti-feminist videos, and I'll probably do more as I go on. Right now, there are plenty of anti-feminists doing just fine, but I do think that MGTOW needs a good poking too. If it's as robust an ideology as you seem to think it is, shouldn't it survive intact? Okay, the rest of these come from a chap called Street Fighter, who is, I'll give him credit, pretty damn sharp. And I'm going to spend most of the remainder of this video tackling his points. Now, his original posts were very long and wall of texty, and they're going to be a pain to pick apart, so I'm not going to link them directly here, but feel free to look at the original video, they're all there. Firstly, he claims that there is no such thing as MGTOWism. Yeah, there is such a thing as MGTOWism, much in the same way as there is such a thing as most other isms. These are things defined by society, unless you are taking affront at my use of the term MGTOWism, in which case let's not quibble over semantics. He then goes on to accuse me of being mean, and that I shouldn't be arguing by painting a negative picture of MGTOW, while deliberately painting me with the same brush. Ad homs. Secondly, the accusation that I want to try and shut up MGTOWs. Not really. I want to try and point out that the second you start trying to push your personal ideology on other people, especially one that is probably going to make them unhappy, you need to back your shit up. Thirdly, he accuses me of trying to paint all MGTOWs with the same anti-woman brush and thus as irrational. And no, I'm trying to point out that you may have a problem element in your movement that you need to deal with. And finally, that men are completely disposable, and that even if all men could become the best man they could be, and got married tomorrow to the best woman they could possibly find, most of these would end after a few years. This seems to sum up the core of the evangelical MGTOW stance, and so I'm going to do my level best to blow a few holes through it. I think that MGTOWs engage in something I'm going to call blackpilling, which is something that the feminists do too. They use misleading or bad numbers to make things sound a lot worse than they really are, which makes people afraid and more likely to buy into the ideology. Firstly, the divorce rate. A lot of people like to use the much ballyhooed 50% figure, and it's actually far, far lower if you look at people with a decent income, education, and social support system. Education seems to be the biggest factor, at least taking a look at the US. Once you start looking at more educated, less welfare reliant, and I am a firm believer that welfare moms throw these divorce stats off immensely, you will see the divorce rates plummet. You're going to see them plummet further when you look at conservatives versus liberals, people in higher income brackets, and people who make better choices when they get married, i.e. not putting their lives on hold because of a baby, or getting married insanely young. The divorce rate between people who are conservative-minded, decently educated, and have a stable income seems to be between 10 to 20%, going below 10% in some cases, and that's actually pretty damn good, nowhere near the 50% warning figures often stated. Yeah, marriage is not perfect. There's a lot of really shitty laws, but I guess this is where the whole purple pill thing comes in. The benefits outweigh the risks. Divorce law needs a massive overhaul though, and I've actually got a video planned on this topic down the line. At the end of the day, stats are always going to be twisty bastards, but I think the stats bear me out here. Marriage has a lot of benefits for men. There are risks, sure, and I would firmly agree that these risks are not even between men and women, and that divorce laws need a massive overhaul in general, particularly to counter things like welfare moms, gold diggers, etc. So yeah, I hope that clears a few things up. That's most of what I want to say. If I didn't tackle your comment, or if you feel like I've misrepresented you, feel free to set me straight. Until then, cheers all.